Have you ever met someone who, in your eyes, was a truly evil person? If yes, what's the story? Maternal grandfather framed his own daughter, so she'd go to jail instead of him for tax fraud. 25 years old, trusting her dad, and he tricked her into signing paperwork she didn't understand. Ignored her crying to save her. Fucking psycho. My biological grandmother. She sexually abused me for about 10 years. It's sick how much she enjoyed it, and she absolutely loved doing it in a public setting or for photos. Yes, that person was my father. Without writing a novel, he was physically abusive towards myself and sexually, physically, and emotionally abusive towards my mother and sisters. One of my sisters is also my niece as a result of his grotesque belief about women and his obsession to have a son. There are arguments that could be made that there are worse people in the world, but in my mind there's no such thing as anything worse than what my father was, a monster. My ex-sister-in-law extremely manipulative and molested her own son. Hate to admit it, but when she died in July due to an exploding propane tank, I was actually happy. So much I can say about Lisa. None of it good. Extreme narcissist. The guy sent emails to me and my boss about my poor work performance while I was sitting at my dying mother's hospital bed. When I returned from that trip a week later, he was literally standing in my office with a tape measure. Apparently he took my absence as an opportunity to take my office permanently. I have a higher job title than this guy to top it off. And no, he didn't get the office. My cousin's girlfriend. They dated for 5 years. He treated her like a queen. He gave her everything he could. Worked 2 jobs, good paying ones too. He brought home 6 figures between the 2 jobs, so that she could stay home and have a nice house and nice clothes and just generally an easy life with nice stuff. His life was dedicated to making her happy. And the thanks he got? She went out of her way to constantly belittle him and make sure he knew he was worthless in her eyes. Constantly. Every fucking day. We kept telling him to break up with her. But he was convinced he couldn't do better and that he'd be forever alone if he lost her. Yeah, that was her doing too. She had him convinced she was doing him a favor just by existing in his life no matter how poorly she treated him. It never stopped, right up to the day he took her. I wish you were dead, seriously, and made it so. Last time I saw her she was laughing about it. I'm not a violent woman, but in that moment I was sorely tempted to wreck her pretty face and make it match her ugly soul. My sister. She has stolen hundreds if not thousands of pain pills from my grandmother and my mom, hundreds of dollars from everyone she knows, and several things from numerous stores like Walmart or Dollar General. She's a habitual lying sociopath who cares about no one but herself. If she was thirsty, she'd sell both her kids for a drink. I could say more, but I'm tired and trying to remember every single bad thing she did would take me at least an hour if not longer. I try to see the good in people. When I hear of people murdering and stealing and everything else, I try to see it from their point of view. I genuinely wish we could all do and be better people. If she dropped dead right now, I would absolutely not shed a single tear. I wouldn't be happy she's gone. But at the same time the world would be a better place if she wasn't in it. The wife of my old boss. She'd come late into work angry drunk, parking her Mercedes across 2 spaces, and demand everyone drop everything to help her fix some trivial issue. If anyone had anything more pressing to get on with, she'd fly off the handle screaming about how it's her fucking company. Then my boss died and she was left in charge. She buried her head in the sand and would scream and cry about how she was going to kill herself when anyone asked her to do anything important like sign bank paperwork or bring someone in to help. She didn't let any of his family attend the funeral, and went into detail in the eulogy about how they got together through an affair and how people getting hurt was necessary. Then when someone at the company who'd been there by the boss' side since the beginning was diagnosed with lung cancer, she said, and I quote, "I wish he'd hurry up and die, so I don't have to give him any more sick pay." Then the business went under and we all got made redundant via email. No idea what happened to her. She lived by herself and had no contact with anyone, burned every single bridge she had, even her neighbors. I don't believe in karma in the spiritual sense, but I definitely feel like she's living her punishment for being so vile. My mom abused my father while he was dying. When I confronted her about it, she just blinked and said, "Yes, I'm abusing him. But he deserves it." I'm well aware of my father's faults, but he was never abusive with her. Worked his entire life to support her. And then when his health failed and couldn't work anymore, she decided he was a liability. She also refused to work at that time, when they were 3 years away from paying off the house, and just needed someone making minimum wage to make the house payment, even though we offered to get her a good paying part-time job. They ended up losing everything. He passed, and then she died alone. Pretended to like me, so they could use me for a home while being extremely abusive for a year, and then robbed me out of $4,000 on top of not paying for rent or anything once. Absolutely. An ex-dill. In my 62 years of life, 30 as a teacher, I can easily say she's the most shockingly horribly person I have ever known, and she continues to be on a weekly basis. Complete evil, trying to destroy other family members and cannot even see how she affects her own children. Luckily she barely gets to see them now, and couldn't for a number of years after she lost custody to her vicious emotional blackmail nastiness. I cannot think of any woman I've ever met that is so horrifically awful in private and in public. Yeah, I met someone who seemed nice at first but turned out to be completely manipulative. They enjoyed tearing people down just for the fun of it, playing mind games, and pitting friends against each other. The worst part was how charming they were about it. They'd smile right to your face while twisting the knife behind your back. Yes, my mother, actual psychopath. She had my father convinced she loved him while she secretly stole everything from and left him in absolute ruin. What killed me was when I realized that because she could never truly love anyone and only saw the value of people by how they could best serve her. She is a master manipulator. I realized at 16 that she never loved me and that she was manipulating me to become like her. I've always treasured my empathy. I am like her in the fact that I can command a room to a small crowd. But I never manipulate. I know what it feels like, and I never want to put that pain on anyone. It has helped when terrible people have fucked me over or when people at my old jobs have needed a voice to represent them. I just jump when I can because I love people. My mother. I was abused and controlled all through my childhood and adolescence, with the abuse continuing into adulthood even after I finally got out of the family home. The things that were done to control me I can't even imagine doing to another person, let alone a child, let alone my own child. As a coping mechanism I downplayed it so much inside my own mind that I still struggle to believe myself when I tell the story. I'm 32 now and I've just recently started therapy and know I have so much to go through, and also that I need to go with the pain rather than against it to make progress. It feels like it gets worse before it gets better, but I know it'll be worth it in time. My uncle father's brother. I'm adopted. And during my whole childhood my mother tried shielding me from this man by keeping me away, but was kind enough to not speak too illy of him. She told me he loved us, but is just a closed-off person. When growing up I learned of how twisted he was. Once my grandmother died he tried taking over my dad's part of the inheritance. He worked overtime for my father to divorce my mom, and once she passed away he tried, along with his wife, to force my dad into changing his will to suit himself. Once my dad got ill and I had to hospitalize him, he made a false complaint against me, saying I abused my elderly helpless father into starvation. All because I wasn't blood and a person of color. I was very close to spend years in prison for pure petness. And to top things off, he spread a rumor during my dad's funeral about me abducting my dad and keeping them apart. Yeah, that's him. Yes, I once met someone who was truly evil. They manipulated others, charming their way into friendships while betraying them for personal gain. My half-brother. I have 3 siblings who are all half-siblings, but I just call the others my brother and sister. I try to distance myself from him as much as possible. He's like 90 disowned from the family because my sister and I have made it clear we will not be attending anything he is at. He's a racist, misogynistic drug addict that steals, abuses his wife and kids, assaults people, and is a generally shit person. He stole a car with a kid in it once. He lived with his aunt to help her since she was bedbound, but was just stealing money from her and letting her rot in bed. He's done meth, heroin, and cocaine, and was so addicted to alcohol he's injected it before. My mom keeps giving him second chances and money, and it's so frustrating. I think my sister is. We don't talk. She's a narcissistic manipulator. Same as my mother. The last time I talked to her she called me telling me a story laughing. A boyfriend had broke up with her. So to get back at him, she called his place of employment and told management she's his girlfriend and he drinks and smokes pot before work, which wasn't true. Kid lost his job. When I told her this wasn't funny at all and was horrible, she seemed genuinely perplexed and started yelling at me lol. My ex-wife. She wasn't the standard kind of evil most people think of. However, she used our kids as weapons against me. It hurt them and she didn't care. They are grown now. All of them see her for what she is. I have good relationships with 3 of them. The 4th doesn't talk to either of us. I'm not a bad guy. You'll never understand why she had to hurt so many people in her hatred of me. But that's how she is. She doesn't just break up with guys. She decides they are nasty, bad, evil people and she hates them all. When my sister was in high school she briefly dated a guy who seemed super nice. She had to babysit me so we would go hang out at his mom's place sometimes and play cards. One day her and I went over there and he seemed off and annoyed, so we didn't stay too long. We left at like 3-4. And when his parents came home from work, he chainsawed them into multiple mini pieces before taking it to himself. Leaving 2-3-ish hours earlier probably saved our lives too.